Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Paul Johnson. We are the Last Nighters. You can find us on the Liberty Movement. There's a YouTube channel called The Liberty Movement, and you can find us there now. The Launchpad Media apparently has been suspended for some kind of made-up violation of some rule. I don't even know, but you can no longer find us on the Launchpad Media because if you try to go to the Launchpad Media, you will get this account has been suspended. So you can find us on lastnighters.com, and this episode will be 154 of the show. You can find the show notes more at lastnighters.com/154, and you can also find it on the YouTube channel, The Liberty Movement, of which I was a guest of the No Way Jose show, also on The Liberty Movement, just a few short weeks ago, and I'll put that on our show notes page. But tonight, we're going to be doing a movie, very appropriately, called Three Idiots, because, well, it's me, my co-host Robert, and our buddy Jared of Breaking Liberty, who, because he is such an idiot, as am I, he is away from his mic at the moment. So I'm going to check in with Two Baller Bill, also known as Robert Paul Johnson, before we introduce Jared of Breaking Liberty.
Hey, buddy. Hey, how's it going? Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. We're going to be doing Three Idiots tonight. It's going to be our first Bollywood feature, but maybe not our last. We'll see what the reviews tell. But I'm excited to get into this one. It should be interesting. Bollywood has if Bollywood's known for anything, it is dance numbers and weirdo, wild wackiness. And I think this movie has a bit of both. But in addition to that, it might also tell a pretty heartwarming story. So should be fun, Daniel.
All right, he's back. Good cover. All right, and our guest is, of course, our friend Jared Wall of Breaking Liberty. He's been on a couple of times before, I think 4 times, so this might be the 5th time. You've been on most recently, I believe, for Gold. Prior to that, you were on for... No, Hotel Rwanda was most recent. Gold was before that. There was something like a week or two... No? Oh, man. Captain Phillips.
Captain Phillips
Gold,
was in between.
And Breaking Bad movie El Camino. And now, Three Idiots. And you have told us in the pre-show and post-show content, I don't know how many times, but probably on every single one of those episodes, available for our Patreon supporters at lastnighters.com/Patreon, that you have a favorite film. And tonight, we're talking about it. It is, of course, Three Idiots, as Robert, one of my co-idiots here, mentioned earlier.
It is one of my favorite films. The more often I watch it, the further down it drops in that list. But definitely, like the first time I watched it, a Indian friend that I worked with recommended it to me and said it was probably the greatest Bollywood movie that was ever made. And so I watched it with my wife, and we both really liked it. It's definitely a little bit too long, and there's some goofiness in it and some overacting in it. But I like the story a lot, and I think it's got a lot of good lessons to be learned.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, and I think that there are going to be plenty of things worth talking about. Now, thank you again for rescheduling this multiple times with us. My last week at work has been extremely busy, and then we were going to record yesterday, and then our cat had his last day, and so that became another difficult thing that I couldn't bring myself to record knowing that as soon as we're done, we're taking him in, because then I would just know the whole time we're recording, like what's about to happen, and that he's suffering as a result of that. So thank you for being so flexible so that we could just go and do what needed to be done.
Yeah, no problem. That's never an easy thing. So my condolences, and is there going to be a replacement cat coming, or maybe a dog this time, or
we have a dog. We have a dog. We have another cat and 9 chickens. So I think
okay. So you're not hurting for pets.
No, we're not hurting for pets, but we are saddened, and it's
Yeah, it's still sad for sure.
yeah, and it's one of those things where you're sad, but then you're like, well, it's a cat. I mean, come on. But we've had him for so long, and yeah, it's super sad. But anyway, my point is, thank you, and Robert, thank you for being able to reschedule so many times on this one. So,
yeah, you owe me money.
well, that we've already established that.
I know, but I'm just saying. I'm just repeating that just randomly for no apparent reason.
I used to have a standing bet every single year from like 1999 through 2015 or something. I would bet $10 every year that the Bills were going to make the playoffs, and I lost every single one of those years. And then I stopped making the bet, and now 3 out of the last 5 years they made the playoffs.
But you've been burned so many times before.
Yeah, but now they're 9-3 and beating the Steelers at halftime. But I still don't feel good about what's coming here with the Bills. Something bad is going to happen at one point here. It's been too good of a season so far.
Are you enjoying the fall of the Patriots?
I would have enjoyed it more if Tom Brady was still there.
Well, we all would. It's true. Yes. But you still got to take some satisfaction.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of sucks because the Bills never once beat Tom Brady in Buffalo while he was with New England in like 20 years. Mm-hmm. So the first time the Bills beat New England is after Tom Brady leaves. So that's kind of like, well, we never got it done.
Victory. Yeah.
Does Tom Brady leaving and them sucking add to his legacy?
I don't know, because he's kind of sucking in Tampa too.
It's hard to say if he's doing well in Tampa or sucking in Tampa. You don't know how good they're supposed to be,
Yeah, that's true.
On paper,
he wasn't very good last year with New England either.
I mean, he is ancient, and that kind of employment is going to beat you up over the course of 20 years.
Yeah, he's your age, Daniel. He's your age.
Yeah, but he gets beat up. He gets beat up by 300-pound dudes all the time. I mean, I don't do that, and I'm falling apart.
You don't do that. Okay. Yep.
It's true. It's true.
All right. Well, how we normally start this off is with the old Google description. So I will pull it up now, and we will get into this. 3 Idiots. So this is an Indian film. Came out in 2009. It's rated PG-13. It's considered a comedy/romance, and is at a excruciating 2 hours and 50 minutes. It's available on Netflix. However, I couldn't watch it on Netflix because I ditched Netflix a couple of months ago due to the Cuties fiasco, but I was able to watch it on Amazon Prime. You got an 8.4 out of 10 on IMDb and 100% Rotten Tomatoes, and 95% of Google users like it. The description reads, in college, Farhan and Raju form a great bond with Rancho due to his positive and refreshing outlook to life. Years later, a bet gives them a chance to look for their long-lost friend whose existence seems rather elusive. The release date was December 23rd, 2009, which was totally coincidental in us doing this film at this time of year, but quite appropriate now that we've seen the release date. And I'm going to butcher a few names here. The director is Rajkumar Hirani, and the screenplay is by him, Vidhu Vinod Chopra and Abhijat Joshi. And it has many musical numbers and interludes. One of them is called Zooby Dooby. And it's, I think there is a very good 2-hour movie in this. It's maybe an hour or so too long. There are good messages and good critiques of things that we will certainly discuss in this episode, but I'm going to go to Robert for your opening salvo, please, sir.
All right, I will accept your faux pas of calling me Robert for this episode. But yeah, so we're talking about the movie 3 Idiots. It's our first Bollywood feature, and it's probably, I guess, all downhill from here if this is the best one. Like Daniel said, it is like almost 3 hours long. And for me, the beginning was very, very slow. like the first 20 to 30 minutes was all set up. And I was just, where is this going? What's actually happening? Who are these characters? It didn't really grab me. So I started and stopped it like a few times in that first 30 minutes and just like did other things. But then once Rancho gets on screen, he's a pretty dynamic character. And he is the tropey character that bucks the system, that's super good at everything. But he's also a very good, he tries hard and he works hard and he's very creative and inventive. And he's, his character does interesting things, or at least fun things. So for me, that kind of hooked me pretty well right there, where he actually used his engineering talents and abilities throughout the film. I appreciated that they weren't just talking about these things and they weren't just engineering students. They actually like applied engineering as part of the plot, which was like, that makes sense that these kids are engineering students. I'm glad that you are using that as part of the movie. I appreciated that. And the whole movie itself, it was almost kind of amazing that all the foreshadowing, all the elements that they foreshadowed throughout the movie all pay off. It was almost incredible, and almost to the point where it's like a bit cheesy. Like there's a scene where, they're delivering a baby and they're using their engineering abilities that they had like previously set up in the movie to deliver the baby. And then there was a scene where, then the baby was like dead. And then he said, "All is well," and it kicked. That was, a little bit heavy on the cheese, a little bit on the nose plot wise, but there were a lot of that. A lot of the on the nose plot wise, like, yes, we are blatantly setting things up. Yes, we're blatantly paying them off. But for me, the human story, the heart that the movie had, the positive messages that the movie had won me over. I forgive the movie for being so on the nose and so cheesy. And this is one of the best movies I've seen this year. Easily.
What?
Easily. This is easily one of the best movies I've seen this year. There were many scenes where I was crying. I wasn't necessarily laughing a whole lot, but there were a lot of scenes where I was smiling and enjoying myself. Absolutely. I was hooked into the story. It didn't make sense. There, we can get into some things like, why does Rancho just piss off and then doesn't contact his friends again? That just didn't make any sense to me. But this is a whole lot of fun. If there's more Bollywood stuff like this, I'm on board.
All right. Well, I just got to say, you had me fooled, sir, with the IMing that we did related to this film. I was fully expecting the Robert tirade of hate for this movie, and I'm glad in a way that you did not hate this movie, but I also am saddened because I was looking forward to said tirade that I was expecting. So I'm thrown for a little bit of a loop here. I'm not sure. I had a whole bunch of content that was related to, okay, Robert hates this, so I'm gonna poke at him based on some of these observations that will draw his ire. But unfortunately, you don't have a whole lot of ire. But I do agree, there is a lot of setup and a lot of payoff. And yes, some of it is cheesy, but I do appreciate the fact that they did pay off a lot of the things that they set up. And you don't even realize that they're setups until after like the second part happens. And then you're like, oh yeah, they set that up earlier.
Yeah, and they do it throughout the whole movie. For like almost every plot point is set up earlier on. And I can't remember a movie where they do it quite like that. So it was almost like a paint by numbers kind of a movie. Like, here's the setup, here's the payoff, here's the setup, here's the payoff. But I was just having such a good time. I didn't care.
Yeah, and a lot of them, like we were saying, don't seem like setups.
Yeah. In the beginning, it seems like a totally natural thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's developing a transformer for, because he's an engineering student. And then, he needs to use that transformer to power the computer and the vacuum cleaner when he's delivering the baby. That makes sense.
Yeah,
And there's
yeah.
a million of those throughout the movie.
And there's even like darker ones where the kid who eventually jumps out the window, he's scared of heights. They're at the top of that tower thing, and they're like doing the musical montage where they're trying to, I guess, get him to rejoin their friendship because some kind of split had occurred. And so they blindfold him and bring him up to this edge, and they take the blindfold off, and he's like looking down, and he's like super scared. Even that's a setup because yeah, he jumps later, but he survives after a very traumatic injury. But anyway, yeah, I'm very surprised, and I will say also that the BBC show Sherlock could take lessons from this in having setups and payoffs, as it has all setup, no payoff. If you've ever seen Sherlock, it's all flash, no panache. But Jared, let's go to you for your take. I am surprised with Robert's positive comments so far. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best movies of the year that he's seen. That's very high praise for a movie review podcast here. I too was a little bit surprised with that review from Dollar Bill here, and really, I mean, I was a little bit surprised that the Google description described it as a comedy. Just watching the movie, it doesn't really feel like a comedy. I mean, there are some semi-funny moments, but I mean, the corniness and the cheesiness and the song and dance aspect of it, that kind of contributes to the it being an hour longer than it needed to. But apparently, that every so often breaking into song and dance, that's a staple of Bollywood movies. And actually, my wife and I, this is kind of funny, we came about this close from choosing Zooby Dooby as our entrance song for our wedding's reception. Didn't end up doing it. But
I don't think anyone would have got it.
Nobody would have gotten it. No, we didn't have any Indians at our wedding, I don't think. Maybe one. But anyways, no, I mean, just in terms of the idea of allowing a child to choose their own future instead of choosing it for them, of letting a child experience and learn organically through trial and just kind of following their interests, as opposed to spoon feeding and forcing and pressuring people into learning, like the SAT test or whatever else you could think of. It's a very good. I mean, they're talking about a university in India, but it kind of, I think there's a lot of lessons that could pertain just to education in general. I think there's a lot of places to take this movie in terms of what we're going to talk about. But yeah, I mean, it's at least in my top 10 of all time movies. Maybe in my top 5, but I really like it. I'm very pleased that Baller Bill also liked it. And I think people should check it out. It's a long movie, but it's really good. And if you've got a kid that's, say, 14, 15, 16 years old, it's a good movie to watch with them.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And I really enjoyed, and this is the libertarian anarchist homeschooling dad in me that really enjoyed the kind of shitting on the traditional school model, the Prussian model, where they're doing the top down, conform to the, making it competitive, but people are basically chasing after useless distinctions and useless grades. They're not actually learning anything. They're just trying to beat out the other students, and they're not actually learning anything of value per se to use in the real world. And it leads to all this pressure. And that's another side of this that's very interesting to me, is that unlike, you were saying you didn't see this much as a comedy. I was viewing this as a comedy until we saw that student hang himself, and I'm like, holy shit, how'd they go from comedic to this? And yet it plays okay.
That's pretty early in the movie too. It's only like 40 minutes into this 3-hour movie, so it's in like that first quarter of the movie that happens, and it gets pretty dark there pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Continue. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. But then Rancho's kind of take on all of this is that by using this model, this Prussian model, this top-down model of competition and pressure, that you're actually teaching a lot of these kids that if they don't succeed at this, that they're going to fail in life. And Virus, I forget his real name, but that's what they nickname him. He's like the dean of the school, and he's like very revered and very respected. And he lives off of that. Like, he wants that respect, and he wants to be this kind of like almost authoritarian. But he's viewing himself as like this great teacher, even though he's just creating, I think Rancho calls them machines, like little robots, like people who just can recite back certain information, but not understand the concept, the greater context of why that information is useful or valuable, or how to use it outside of the box, those types of things. And Rancho is very much an unconventional thinker, and he's very much at odds with that traditional approach. And I too, I think, would be at odds with it. And Robert, I know you would be as well, because when we were in high school, I know that you were doing very, very well for a long time. And then something in you changed, and you were like, you know what? Fuck this. This is dumb.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was very good at memorization and regurgitation. I was very good. It was very quite easy to me. So I always did well. I was a grade A student, but on my senior year, they call it senioritis, but it was me really just becoming disillusioned with everything. And I just quit caring. I went from 4.0 to 0.5. And it was because I didn't feel that I was learning anything of value. And I wasn't, for the most part. I mean, to some extent, that's my own fault. Like, a lot of people in life take what they're given. And it takes this kind of a special person to recognize that you're not necessarily given the best and that you need to go above and beyond. And I was not that special. I didn't quite realize that I needed to take what the school offered me as a starting point and go above and beyond and go into actually what I cared about to learn. So I quit, basically. I stopped going. I stopped caring. And yeah, maybe if the school had been more oriented towards, what are you interested in? More Montessori style versus here is what you need to learn. Here's in the worst possible way to learn it, right? Like, does anybody even remember? Like, I don't remember how to do, even I could probably do some algebra. I could remember some things from high school, but it's really just, you're remembering things for the test, and then you're dumping it so that you can remember things for the next test. And it's probably one of the worst ways to learn, at least for most people. I would say it's great for getting high test scores. And if that's your measuring stick for a good school, then okay. But like Rancho in this movie, and I think he makes a pretty good argument, claims that no, it's more about, learning why, not just what, and understanding why, not just what. And so there's one scene in the film where he's in an engineering class, and the professor asks him, what a machine is. And he kind of gives this poetic response. Like, a machine is anything that helps humanity to, apply energy and make life easier. So he's talking about all these different things that are machines, and he points all around them. The machines here, and aren't machines wonderful because they increase our work capacity, and it makes life easier and better and more fulfilling for everybody, and gives us more time to do other things, right? All these time-saving measures that are the creation of modern engineering minds. And the professor was just looking for the dictionary definition, and he was just like, "No, that's a crap answer. Get the fuck out."
Yeah, this isn't a philosophy class.
Yeah, what are you doing, wasting our time with this bullshit? And so, yeah, I mean, Rancho is, I think he makes a good argument in the film. You know, it seems like everybody adopts, and all these status schools, they've all adopted kind of this Prussian model. I don't know, maybe there are some places in the world where they are more, interest oriented, but in my mind, the world is a specialist place. You're not necessarily looking for somebody when you're hiring somebody to build you a house. You don't care if they can also give a good haircut. You're just looking for the best guy that can build a house. So the world is built for specialists, and this kind of general education that doesn't really prepare you for the world, like I felt from high school. I didn't feel prepared at all. I graduated high school, and there was this big celebratory moment when you're throwing off your caps and you're running around and you're like, "Hey, we're graduated." I had this big moment like, holy fuck, what do I do now? I had no idea. And it's okay to not know, but I felt like, and I still feel to this day, that I should have had some idea. That the schooling, that the education I received should have given me some tools with which to take on the modern world. And I didn't feel that at all. I didn't feel like I had any direction, any kind of idea that I am prepared to do X, Y, or Z. I just felt like, well, I guess I got to go to college now, because that wasn't anything. And maybe that's some of my fault. Like I said, maybe some of that is my fault. But the education system, like this movie says, is pretty much garbo. And what do you expect with a government monopoly, essentially? I mean, there are private schools, but you got to compete with theft-funded schools. So,
right, and many of the edicts that come down through the public schools end up being enforced in the private schools as well, irregardless. But a lot of your discussion reminds me of when I was in school. You were a couple of years older than me, but we were very close. And seeing you go through that experience, it actually made me also feel like I was wasting my time there. But I found a different path to sort of not participate as much, and that was to get cozy with the administration of the school and get cozy with a few teachers and become like a teacher's assistant, and also work in such ways to where I would only actually have 3 or 4 classes a day and like 2 or 3 periods of like being a teacher's assistant or whatever. And I took that to college with me as well. So it was a way of like working within the system to basically get through the system with good grades and not subject myself to the bullshit as much. But another thing that Rancho sort of talks about, and this is reminiscent of like John Taylor Gatto. I'm sure you're familiar with him. Brett Venot of the School Sucks podcast is a big fan of his, and he died a few years ago. But he was Teacher of the Year in New York, and then he quit. And he made a crusade to talk about the top-down Prussian model and how it's terrible for most kids. There's different learning styles that certain kids will gravitate to, and having the system that is in place presently only teaches to like the middle third or something like that. So it forces everyone kind of into this cookie cutter thing, and then it grades them. So it not only puts these competitive pressures on them and forces them all into the same model, but then it actually makes them feel as if they are being judged in such a way that will either destroy their motivation to learn. So, like kids in general, when they're young, they want to learn. They're curious about the world. And our goal with our kids is to facilitate that, whatever they're interested in, we're going to find as much information about that as possible and make it fun and interesting for them, and rather than force things down their throat. But that's the type of model, forcing things into kids in one specific style. You're going to turn off so many of them, and they're going to not want to be motivated anymore. They're going to lose their desire to learn more. And you were an example of that. And then the grading system, you're basically telling kids, you're labeling them, and they're going to take that label they've earned from whatever grade into whatever endeavors they do in school in the future. And so if they're a C student, oh, I'm a C student. If they're a D student, oh, I'm a D student. And so they're going to underperform. The last thing I'll mention, then we'll go to Jared, is I remember in my graduation sitting in rank order of our GPAs. And if you were above a certain GPA, you got this little gold cord that was like for honors. And the thing that stands out to me specifically is that I was the last person to get one of those gold cords. So the person to my right had a gold cord. The person to my left did not. We were seated in rank order on the football field in front of all the parents and everyone in the stadium, so that you could just visually view the class similar to how they did in Three Idiots, based on rank order. Who were the worst performers in the school, who were the best performers in the school. So it's just like blatantly on display in front of everyone. And I was at that cutoff line. I was the last person in my class to get honors. And the person next to me must have felt like shit, because it's all gold cords this way, all no cords this other way, right there at that line. So I think it's a shitty thing to do to people, basically, is what I'm saying. But Jared, let's get your take on all of this. Did you experience a similar situation in your educational upbringing?
Yeah, my senior year of high school, very very much like Dollar Bill, I just really phoned it in. I mean, I didn't quit going or anything, but I definitely did not care anymore. And part of it was because I got into a college in my fall semester of my senior year, so my next step was already planned out, and it was locked in. So regardless of what I did in spring semester senior year, it didn't really matter. But I mean, and in college, I probably should not have gone to college. Looking back on it, like I wish I had started at 18 years old at 0 instead of starting at 22 years old at negative 60,000 or whatever it was. So I mean, that's the cost of higher education, especially in cases where you're not going for anything worthwhile, or I guess I shouldn't say worthwhile, or anything valuable, anything with skills that are demanded on the marketplace. That's just a waste of time and a waste of money to do that. Now, as far as going and getting an engineering degree, which ironically is the same type of degree that I got in college, even so, I got an engineering degree, and now I'm only very tangentially doing anything related to engineering. But I mean, kind of like what you were starting to talk about, Dollar Bill, is that the coming out of high school with no real marketable skills is a serious problem. And I think it's a problem obviously in the U.S. government school system, but it seems like it's a problem most around the world. And what this movie portrays, like Farhan, for instance, he had some pretty good skills as a photographer just on his own. That was his interest. That's what he organically chose to learn, and he got good at it. But the pressure from his family, and probably to a certain extent society, and from virus itself, kind of pushed him into, okay, well, photography, that was a stupid childhood interest of mine, but now I got to get serious and go into a a field that I can make a lot of money, which engineering can be, isn't always, but I mean, you see the pressure on these kids from virus and from the school, but also especially from their parents. And I think that's, kind of Daniel, what you were talking about. And as a parent, that's something that I'm going to hope to. I mean, my kids are still young. My son just turned 1. My daughter's about to turn 3. But that'll be something that I definitely try not to do is force them into something that they're not interested in. It's like what you're saying, kind of cultivate that natural curiosity that they have. And then Baller Bill, I mean, the memorization versus organic learning kind of juxtaposition that you made there is very, very well on display in this movie. The scene where Silencer, the kid who takes some kind of medicine that makes him have some really nasty farts, so they call him Silencer. He's giving he's the top student other than Rancho, and he's giving he's giving some kind of a speech to the whole student body and people, and like the high level academics within the university, and probably from the state of India at large. I'm not really sure who all was there, but he's not a native Hindi speaker. He's from Uganda originally. He's a Ugandan Indian. And so he moves to India, or maybe he goes to India just to go to this school, but he's not a native Hindi speaker. And so he's getting help writing this speech that he's going to give in Hindi from the librarian, or somebody who works in the library. And he gets it all, polished and nice and written well. Then as they're going through it together, the librarian is like, "Oh, and this word means," and is starting to tell him. And Silencer's just like, don't worry about it. I don't care what it means. I'll memorize it. And then, shortly thereafter, Rancho goes in, and to mess with him, does like a keyword search and changes he changes the word serve in the Microsoft Word document or whatever that they're working on to screw. And so every time he's talking about how much of a great public servant and how he's done given so much service to so many children, he's actually saying the word screw. And my friend who recommended this movie to me said that if you're a native Hindi speaker, I mean, it's funny even with subtitles, but he's like, if you were a fluent Hindi speaker since you were a child and listened and watched this movie, it is the funniest scene probably in the history of Bollywood movies. And I mean, like I said, it is really funny even without knowing Hindi, just reading the subtitles. But I mean, that's kind of just goes to Baller Bill, your point there about what education, really true education, is going to come from organic and natural curiosity and real learning. It's not going to come from memorization, because you're just going to forget it, or you're going to make some kind of a stupid mistake like Silencer did in his talk here. And
yeah, that reminds me when a friend of mine from high school, he ended up getting engaged to a girl from Japan, and their wedding was in Japan, and I went there, and they asked me to perform the ceremony in Japanese. Well, I don't speak Japanese, but they gave me the little speech, and it wasn't like super long. It was maybe like 20 lines or something like that, and I just memorized it. I mean, they told me what it said, but I had to practice it over and over and over again, and I performed the ceremony for them. But they could have made me say anything, and I'm thankful that they did not. But yeah, it's sort of similar to what happened in this movie. They didn't take advantage of it, thankfully. But another side of it is that I'm very much a person who wants to know why. Like Robert, you were talking about this earlier, where when you're learning something, it seemed like a lot of the students here were just learning it because that was the thing they were told to learn. And it wasn't like how am I going to apply this, or why do I need to know this, and what conceptually does it mean in relation to the context of other things. And I'm very much a person who wants to learn how something fits into something else. Like, why am I learning this? How will this be useful for me? And what will it do for me going forward? And similar to you, I also felt somewhat directionless out of high school. All I knew was, and I remember this like conversation in my head distinctly. I didn't apply to college till the last day to apply for college for the two schools that I even applied to. And it was just like, all right, I don't know what I'm going to do. So rather than like close off these pathways, I'm just going to fill out these applications so that I still have the opportunity. And so that's why I ended up going. But similar to you, I had no idea, other than going to college, maybe, what I even wanted to do. And so college, in a way, was a way for me to just continue to not be a grown up, you know? And I feel like that sort of happened over the course of time. It used to be that the lifespan was 30 years. I mean, you were having kids at like 15, 16 years old, right? In the Middle Ages or whatever. You were a middle-aged man by then. Like, we would be long dead right now, given those lifespans. So it feels as if lifespans have increased. So has the opportunity to be almost childlike in a certain way, or infantilized. And I think that the government has an incentive to keep you infantilized, sort of like in a childlike state where you're not really like feeling like you're a fully grown and capable individual to make decisions on your own. Like, it's best to defer to experts or to the bureaucrats to give you direction in your life. And I feel like it's to their advantage, and it's also a direct offshoot of this Prussian model, which was adopted by all these governments. So they can propagandize you.
Yeah, the government has an incentive to not necessarily turn out independent, autonomous people that are capable of providing value in the world. They want people that are, need government, right? They dependent upon them. That's where they get their power. If everybody just ignored them out of existence, they wouldn't have jobs. Government takeover of education really has created, it seems to me, that when you are forced to pay for something, you stop seeing it as a product and you more start seeing it as a right. Like, I think if people saw education more as a product, they would look at schools and what they offer far more critically. Like, would you really spend, $200,000 on a gender studies degree? You might look at it, like you're talking about, as being a more infantilized person. And I was definitely an infantilized person. I really didn't have much of a concept of what I was paying for in terms of an education and what it was going to get me. I didn't have that perspective. Now, maybe that's where parents come in and they're like, yeah, you're wasting your time here. You're wasting your time and your money. You should pursue something a little more interesting. And the movie presents, parents as kind of the bad guys. I mean, obviously they love their children and they want to see them do well, but they do present them as these pressures. And then virus and the schooling system is yet another pressure. And Rancho kind of pushes back on this, and he's talking about why, suicide is so high in India. And yeah, these cultures that have massive pressures also have massive suicide rates. Like in Japan and India, they have massive suicide rates. And there is a lot of competition for these degrees. Now, I'm a big fan of competition. And I think that, I know, Daniel, you were talking about how it's a bad thing to, display, how well you did in a school, for everybody to see. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. In the movie, there's this school photo where Rancho's like, why do you have the bad students up at the top and you got, the good students closer to you? And I'm kind of on the side of virus on that issue. I'm not 100%. I see Rancho's point. I see how it's kind of creating this artificial kind of competition where learning should be more of a pure you, like a relationship of you with the world, right? Like you and the material. But ultimately, we are going to be competing in the real world. And how well you apply and use your time should kind of reflect on how well you do. Like someone who just, jacks off all day and spanks it to different porno mags probably shouldn't be getting the 4.0 grades and shouldn't be.
Whoa. I feel personally attacked here.
Yeah, probably. Probably you do. I mean, there are going to be a few people that are going to be able to do that and still do well. I probably could have done a little bit of that in high school. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was not the hardest worker, and yet, I mean, I had a fair amount of natural talent that I exploited. But again, I wasn't engaged like you guys also were not. I think this is a common refrain that we were not necessarily felt engaged with the content we were provided.
Right. Now, I just want to take off on one of the points you're making and take it from the other angle. So you're talking about how when you're forced to pay for something, you view it less as a service or you care less about like what you're getting for your money. And you see that in like how medical procedures, the prices can just go up and up and up because insurance kind of buffers you from experiencing the cost of that. So there's less consumer pressure on the prices being lower and the quality being better. But the flip side is that when you're a service provider of, say, education services, and you're going to get paid no matter what by force, then you have less incentive to do a very good job. Sure, you have certain standards that you have to meet, but there's ways to game that. There's ways to meet those standards and then not be a good teacher or not do a good a service as would otherwise be in an actual free market competitive marketplace where you're going to have a variety of different options to consumers, and you have to be an option that somebody is willing to pay for voluntarily. And where there are competitive pressures, where there's other options for people. So, you can be a specialist. Like that was another thing you started talking about earlier. Specialization is very important in driving forward progress in society. And specialization is what allows you to have the division of labor so that you can focus on being very, very good and competent at a very narrow field and focus on that one area rather than being this jack of all trades, master of none kind of situation, which, yeah, there's a certain like desire to be competent in many things, but there's only so much capacity and so much time in the day and so much training and practice and learning that anyone can do about so many different subjects and aspects that, are part of the natural world, that you have to have specialization to get to the point where you're good enough to progress things going forward. So I feel like I'm sort of rambling here, but I guess my main point was that when you are forcing customers to pay for something, you have less incentive to do as good of a job, and you're protected from other competitors competing with you, making similar products or better products or lower cost products that you are not faced with in a monopolized situation like this.
Yeah, I don't think it's any mystery as to why the public school teacher unions were pro lockdown, pro shut the schools down, where the private school teachers were like, I'm sorry, we need to still work. We still gotta teach these kids something. But yeah, Jared, I don't know when you graduated, but when I graduated, we had a fair amount. We crammed for the SATs and that kind of thing. But later on in my life, I got involved with some public school teachers. well, actually, it was the technology department at a public school. And so kind of by osmosis, I gleaned a little bit about how education is going on these days, or at least 5 years ago. I don't imagine it's gotten any better. But standardized testing had been a thing, had been implemented since I graduated, but now it's a thing. And it would take up like months of the kids' time just studying for these standardized tests, like every year. It was insane. I don't think it starts until middle school or something, or maybe even high school. But can you imagine, like 2-3 months out of the school year, you're just cramming for this one test so that the school can show, hey, look at us. We did X amount good on this one test. Let's get our funding, as if this is what passes for education these days.
Oh, is that the No Child Left Behind stuff? That funding was tied to test results in the George W. Bush era?
Yeah, probably. It's still going on.
That's when it really got ramped up to what it is now and today, and what Baller Bill's referring to. I graduated in 2005 from high school, so that was kind of just becoming a thing as I was graduating. But I mean, we've brought up The Wire on this show before in the past, and that show really speaks to this point that you're making very well in terms of teaching to the test. And like the guy who was a cop and then became a teacher, Presbalewski, he in that show, he's finally figured out a way to actually get through to these inner city kids, and he's teaching them things that they're interested in. He's teaching them math by teaching them gambling and like probabilities and dice and things like that. So he's finally figured out how to get through to these kids and to get their attention, and they're actually learning something. And then all of a sudden, word comes down from on high that, hey, the test is coming up. Everybody better be teaching to this test, because that's where all of our funding comes from. And so anything that's outside of the box, or outside of the standard curriculum, or outside of the contents of what the standardized test is going to be, has to get shut down. So Presbalewski goes from having this, finally breaking through to this very inner city, very rough school students, and then has to give it all up. And then they're shown sleeping in class again, and cutting class, and getting involved in the drug trade, et cetera, because what they're learning in school is no longer speaking to their world. And I guess real quick, I just wanted to, Daniel, you were talking about John Taylor Gatto there for a second. Your whole description and your kind of how the way you explained who he is and what he stood for was excellent. I did want to just make the point real quick. He didn't just quit being a teacher. He like epically quit. He did one of those like, you're cool, F you, I'm out type things, and wrote like a whole big thing in the New York Times, and was like, the public school system sucks, and all our kids are screwed unless we start doing it a completely different way. And then he just wrote books about all of the history that he had learned in terms of where the American school system came from. But yeah, John Taylor Gatto is one of those OG kind of people in the libertarian world. He is the man when it comes to being against public schooling and government control of schools. And I'm glad you did start bringing up the teacher unions too, because it's not just the fact that these public schools are monopolies and people are forced to pay for them. It's also that the bad teachers can't be fired. If you're in a union, the whole purpose of the union is to protect the employees at the expense of the company. In this case, the company is a government-funded monopoly, and at the expense of the clients. And again, the clients are innocent kids who have, no say in all of that. Yeah.
And the parents are forced to pay for it.
And the parents
are forced to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're forced to sit through bad teaching in some cases, and those teachers just get raises right along with everybody else and get pensions right along with everybody else. So it's a system that definitely perpetuates mediocrity.
Yeah.
Anytime the market
mediocrity
is
at best. Yeah.
Anytime the market is interfered with, like, you remove all the controls that customers and consumers have to reward good actors and punish bad actors, you're going to get these people that coast through with protection. Like, yeah, how much should a bad teacher make? How much would you pay a bad teacher to teach your kid? Like, bring back the private tutor system. It's like,
yeah, but they're insulated.
Would you hire this guy?
Yeah, they're insulated from the cost mechanism. Like feeling the price they're paying for a specific good or service. And that disconnect makes it easier for those poor services to continue to get funded. I mean, yeah, it's by force, but also like there's that lack of connection. Like when we talked about the cat earlier, we spent a bunch of money with the vet the last couple of months, and yeah, we're willing to pay for it because we loved our animal. But yeah, I mean, it starts to add up, and then you're starting to like think about these decisions and whether you're willing to continue to go on. Well, when it comes to schooling like this, you don't have that connection anymore. There's no like questioning, like, are we paying too much? When is too much? When, or how do we, find an alternative, right? Because like when you homeschool, and that's one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that more and more kids are homeschooling. So that's growing a lot. But traditionally, when you would homeschool or do private school or private tutoring, you're effectively paying twice because you're having to pay for the public schooling, government schooling by force. And then on top of that, pay either monetarily or with your time and labor and acquiring the resources and, teaching implements, et cetera, for your kids for homeschooling on top of that. So, it's really like a really screwed up situation. And speaking to John Taylor Gatto and our kids, there is a series of books for kids called the Tuttle Twins, and our girls love it. We read it to them at least a book or every day or two. And we do the Golden Rule one a lot because when they fight, we like to try to correct that with the Golden Rule one. But one of the more recent ones is called the Tuttle Twins and the Education Vacation. And it's about different learning models, and it features John Taylor Gatto very prominently in it. And he talks about like how grading affects students and their perceptions of themselves and how they perform going forward, and how people have different learning styles, and how getting out in the world and traveling around, you'll actually learn a lot more than sitting in a room. It's a similar point that Robin Williams' character makes in Good Will Hunting. Like, yeah, you can recite all these things that you learn in books, but can you tell me what the Sistine Chapel smells like? That's another movie we should do at some point, I think, Robert. I don't know if it'll hold up, though. I remember really liking that 25 years ago.
I bet you it still holds up.
I'd hate it.
It'll hold up. It's an excellent movie. I just saw it again recently. It's very, very good.
Really?
Yeah, and that relationship between Williams' character is so strong that I think.
Yeah, and Robin Williams was so good in that movie.
Okay.
Yeah, he deserved his Oscar in that.
I haven't seen it in probably over 10 years, but just recollecting it, I feel like I'd hate it now for whatever reason. So
maybe we'll find out.
We will find out. Oh, we will. We will see. But anyway, the Tuttle Twins, highly recommended. I'll put a affiliate link on the show notes page. And I know, Jared, you have one as well. So you can go to ours at lastnighters.com and click the link there. Or, Jared, I can put your link on there as well. And people can pick whichever one they want to do.
No, this is your show. You guys do your thing. Don't worry about it.
But it's really good. I do enjoy it quite a bit. It's they're written by Connor Boyack, and he does the Libertas Institute in Idaho or in Utah. And then the illustrator is really good too. His name's Elijah Stanfield, and they're doing a cartoon series coming out soon too.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're gonna be an empire here soon. They got like a board game, and they're introducing books for like toddlers and babies. Like touch and feel type books.
Yeah.
And they've got the animated series that you're talking about. They've got books for teenagers. They've got companion books like so for I've it's become a habit of mine to buy these books and give them to my non-libertarian friends to read to their kids, because it's not just the books that come, but you get like parent guides that go along with the book. And even if they didn't come with the parent guides, the books themselves would do a very good job of even teaching an adult, about freedom and economics and etc. And peace and non-aggression and all that good stuff. But you combine these parent guides with them and the recommended readings, like Bastiat's The Law, etc. And it's a really great tool that Connor has put together. It's an excellent addition to the libertarian movement world. And yeah, I'm right there with you. I recommend those books wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and we have gifted them to a few people who are not necessarily pro liberty minded, at least in our respect. And I wonder how they take these books when they read them. I haven't asked them, but it would be kind of interesting to hear.
Hey, I gave this set to a former coworker of mine, and he said that he was reading the books every night he's got him and his wife, between the two of them, between a couple of divorces, they have 7 kids. And so they were reading those books all together, and like the older kids were reading them to the younger kids, etc. And so he came into work one day and he told me that he had been joking around the weekend before with one of the older daughters about like, oh, how come we're having so much trouble paying for X, Y, and Z? How why are we struggling with money or whatnot? And I don't remember exactly what the conversation was. He's like, why are we so poor? And the daughter was like, because of the creature, referring to the creature from Jekyll Island. I thought that was really funny.
Nice.
Yeah. My kids say a lot of stuff that I'm happy that they say, but I'm afraid that they would say it in front of the wrong person, and then those people get really mad at me.
Let them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I think this was the last episode we did. I don't know but I brought up the fact that like these public schools and even really a lot of universities don't need to exist anymore. Like information is free, like 100%. You can find anything you want about anything, and all you have to do is have an internet connection.
Actually, this just in, I'm going to fact check that and tell you not anymore, because things are being throttled and censored like you wouldn't believe in the last couple.
You're right about that. I mean, but yeah,
for the time being, it's
right now it's not quite China yet.
Information is the cheapest it's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, information and communication are two areas of the economy that the supply has gone up infinitely and the cost has come down infinitely. And it kind of this movie was 10 years ago, so this was as the internet was building up, but I guess it wasn't quite to where it is now. And so Rancho, remember that little kid who helps them with their luggage and kind of shows them the way.
Millimeter,
centimeter, whatever his name is. He's like, man, I wish I had money to go to this school or something like that. And Rancho's like, oh, you don't need money to go to school. All you need is a uniform. Apparently, that's how Rancho even got to this point at all to begin with, is that he was being like a servant to some very rich family and ended up just going to the son of that rich family's classes in the son's place and doing really well because he was really interested. And then the family was like, well, if you've come this far, you got to go the rest of the way. And basically had Rancho go get an engineering degree from this very prestigious university for their son without their son ever having to go. So Rancho isn't even Rancho's real name. And I forget what his real name is. It comes out at the end of the movie. But yeah, so I just found that part of it interesting. I mean, that whole you don't need money, all you need is a uniform. It's cool in terms of education. In the movie, it did kind of get used for some nefarious purposes too. Like they broke into a party, because they wore the clothing that was associated with that party, and they ended up eating food and that wasn't theirs, that they hadn't been gifted, that they hadn't been offered, that they hadn't paid for. So I mean, there is a little bit of that in the movie, but in terms of the education, in terms of millimeter, and it's even let's say we thought that higher education and modern American universities were the shit. Well, still, you can go and I think it's MIT has all of their lectures available for free online.
I believe Harvard does as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of them do. So that kind of just continues to go. Like, really, the only reason to go to university these days is to get that piece of paper. The education is available outside of that. I mean, there might be some good mentoring that can take place on, especially for engineering or medicine or law or something like that. But for just about anything else, you can find everything that you need to know just, doing a simple Google search.
Yeah, doing in-person labs is one thing that you really can't replicate a whole lot. But for most everything else, I love your point that these higher learning institutions and even a lot of public high schools and that sort of thing are just these vestigial organs that are being propped up with government money. And this push for making college free is just going to further devalue those degrees that they get. And I would love to see just a real pure market mechanism to even see how much the public even values these things. Like, I know there's a certain amount of inertia to these things. Like, hey, I went to college. It was great for me. I want my kid to go to college. But for people, if college actually cost, probably what it should, I don't know, whatever that is, but you might see people making more informed decisions. Like, what are you actually going to get out versus, what you're putting in? And with the cost of information being so low, what am I really even doing? And maybe we go back more towards a trade school type situation, like with doctors and specializing schooling. And this general crap just kind of gets shortened, maybe hopefully to just a few years. And this move into the more specialized areas, because I just, the whole move from the leftists to socialize even the higher education and making it, quote, free, really just seems to be propping up their ideology and just spreading their ideology. And it's a nightmare. Leave it open to the public, leave it open to the market, and we'll find out how much people actually value their crap ideas.
Yeah, I love that their reasoning is that you didn't learn enough in the previously provided government schooling. So it's like an admission of failure.
Absolutely.
And so they're just like doubling down.
It's like, we didn't teach these kids. Yeah, there's a tweet I saw recently. Public education has not created an educated public. That's pretty accurate.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, hey, we're actually way over time already, so we should probably do any final comments before we get into final summary and review. And I'll go to you, Jared.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that the payoff of the movie, the main feel good part of the movie is Rancho at the end. He's built himself. He's created this school that's it seems very Montessori like, and it seems very hands-on type learning, and he's 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 embodied that phrase that a lot of people like to put on social media, or wherever, of be the change that you want to see in the world. And he complained in the beginning a lot about the school system and the pressure and the grading, and the hierarchy of it, and the labeling. And he didn't like it, and he figured out a way to work around it. And I think that's becoming more and more prevalent these days. I mean, like Daniel, like you brought up, homeschooling is really, really taking off here, as the primary silver lining to the germ. And I mean, with things like the Tuttle Twins and the Ron Paul curriculum and Tom Woods' Liberty Classroom, which you should put affiliate links of all of those for yourself in the show notes page here, and all of the listeners should go and buy those things, because I mean, they're awesome, but you're also helping out a couple of great guys here with a cool podcast that you guys are entertained with all the time. But I just wanted to just real quick. I mean, I have a story of myself that I want to tell, but before I get into that, I did want to kind of ask you guys what you thought about Rancho and the love interest aspect of the movie, and how he breaks up this engagement by basically pointing out that all this guy cares about is the fact that his fiance is going to be a doctor, and they're going to have a lot of money, and he's got $300 Italian leather hand-stitched shoes, and et cetera, et cetera. I thought that whole plot line within the movie that's where some comedy came in, is how Rancho kind of made that guy look like a chump. But I was wondering, I don't know, I don't know if there's anything libertarian at all in that plot line, but I mean, I guess ruining somebody else's $300 shoes is not that nice, but pointing out to a fiance what she's actually getting into is kind of, that's kind of nice on the other hand. So
yeah, I know, Robert, you've got a rant in you. I know you've talked about this before, about how women are looking for providers, and so like seeing somebody who's successful and can provide is an attractive characteristic or feature that is often looked for. And even though, Rancho does demonstrate to her that she is just being treated as a trophy by this guy who only cares about how much something costs or whatever. So even after that's demonstrated and she does call off the engagement, a few years later, she comes back to the guy. So I thought that part was the most interesting, was that she went back to him after this revelation and then knows what she's getting into and is still willing to do it. But Robert, I'll let you. I'm gonna let you finish.
Yeah, I mean, I had a little bit of an issue with Rancho kind of spending, he kind of did the Sherlock Holmes moment, right? Where he saw her and met her for like a minute and instantly correctly diagnosed her whole life, right? Because she was like, I saw that you had that old watch, and that was obviously your mom's old watch that you cared about very much, and he didn't appreciate that old watch, and how does that make you feel? It was a bit easy, plot contrivances, the romance needs to happen. You kind of have the guy was kind of a cartoon, like the 80s ski villain, right? That's just like this very shallow jock kind of guy that is so clearly clueless that he doesn't know that he's an asshole, that he's so cardboard cutout of a person. And Daniel, you got a good point though. I like that the lady, women do value providers, absolutely, and that is ultimately, kind of the male role in the division of labor of the sexes, that the woman is going to be out of it, while she's pregnant for a good amount of time, and isn't going to be able to be a good provider during that time. And the man is generally more expendable, and he needs to be able to provide to contribute to that relationship, to provide and create this successful partnership, right? To progress the human race. So I don't really have an issue with women choosing people's providers. That's you have your preferences, and if you've got you got this hot 25-year-old sexy body, and that's what a successful male finds attractive, and you've got that hip to waist ratio, and I'm not one to necessarily critique other people's choices in that regard. You have your preferences, they're yours. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. Rancho, on the other hand, is okay with telling you you're wrong and saying that, hey, look, you don't really like this guy. You're smart. You really want a more interested, a deeper pool to dive around and play around in. And I'm that deeper pool, although it doesn't really come out and say it. I, for one, enjoyed the romance, even if it was a bit hokey and movie-y, but I was fully on board. In fact, I appreciated it. I haven't really watched a whole lot of romantic comedies, lately. I don't know what the state of romantic comedies are. My big romantic comedies were like You've Got Mail and, those Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks movies from the 80s and 90s. Where I thought that the romance was fairly well written. Here, it's a little bit hokey, but I was on board. From a libertarian angle, I don't know if that guy represented capitalism, maybe like a shallow consumerist, whereas Rancho is the true entrepreneur. Rancho is the purest, actually, of all entrepreneurs, because he is just he's just looking to create life, time-saving innovations, and to create things that people will value and love and treasure and will make people's lives better. He is just like the purest of entrepreneurs. So I can't say that this movie has any kind of anti-capitalist message. If anything, it's very, very pro-capitalism. So
yeah, there's that one dig at Marx where he borrows Silencer's pants or steals them, and he's like, "Well, remember Marx said,
share everything."
Yeah, from he who has to he who needs." But it was almost like a quippy kind of way. But I think you're right that Rancho has an unconventional way of thinking, but he is also very much in the trying to innovate and trying to be entrepreneurial in a lot of different ways. And he also has a very entrepreneurial kind of concept in his whole Allzwell thing. I mean, yeah, they use it as a vehicle for getting the baby to kick and then revive later. But it's, I forget whose quote it is per se, but maybe it's Henry Ford, where he says, whether you think you can or you can't, either way, you're right. Because mindset plays a big role in whether you can accomplish something. If you think you can do it, you can push yourself beyond what you are aware of. You can push your body further than you think you can. It's mind over matter kind of thing. And I think that really is embodied in his whole Allzwell thing, where he's telling himself, he's calming himself down so he can take on challenging and frightening situations. And he does that many times in the film. And I think that's another part of his message, and it ties right in with the entrepreneurial spirit. So that's my final note I wanted to bring in before we get into final summary and review.
Wait, I wanted to hear Jared's story.
Oh, yep, Jared's story.
It's actually, I've never actually put this out publicly. People who are close to me know this, but it's kind of just a story for if there's any listeners who are about to go to college or thinking about going to college. This is kind of my story from college a little bit. Is that I got to college after, my senior year of high school of not giving a crap, and that very strongly spilled over into college. And I would go to class, in the beginning of the semester and listen to my professors and be, I get it. I get it. And then I would just stop going to class or go very rarely. And I did horrible in college. And then come my senior year, my spring semester senior year, so my final semester in college, I needed to pass all 6, or it might have even been 7 classes that I was taking that semester. I needed to pass all of them in order to graduate. And sure enough, it gets to the end of the semester and I failed 2 of those classes. So I was like freaking out because I had managed to convince my parents to let me stay in college, when I should have dropped out much earlier. And I stayed in because I had made some really good friends and had developed some really strong connections, and enjoyed the people. But the only reason I stayed in college was for social reasons. But anyway, so I failed those 2 classes my spring semester senior year, and I ended up just going to, one of them was an economics class and one of them was an engineering class. And so I went to my economics professor. It was just like, what can I do to get me bumped up to a D? And he was like, well, if you do all of the homework that you didn't do for the whole semester this weekend and bring it to me on Monday, I'll bump you up to a D. So I did that. I spent the entire weekend doing just stupid, economics 101 homeworks and brought it in. So I bumped that from an F up to a D. Well, then I still had one more class that I had failed. Fortunately, my college had this policy in place where if it's just one class that would be preventing you from graduating, you can take what's called an F test, where it's like a one-time exam that you take for that class. And if you pass, then you pass the test class. And if you fail, then you fail the class. So I spent about a week with my professor and going to study classes and studying on my own. And I managed to pass that test and was able to graduate with like I don't know, I graduated college like a 1.5 or some shit GPA. It was terrible. But those friendships and those relationships that I mentioned that I had been building, I had a job waiting for me the Wednesday. I graduated on a Saturday and I started my first job on the Wednesday after graduating. And it was because I had put some effort into making friends with people, and I had worked hard I had joined a fraternity, and a lot of the alumni were appreciative of some of the things that I had done with and for the fraternity. And so one of the old, 1970s fraternity alumni who was a VP at some company in New Jersey gave me my first job, and it was not on my academic merits by any means. It wasn't on my GPA. It was on the relationship that I had built. But I guess there's that story to college, and I guess kind of just like a buyer beware type story. But I also went to college, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this is probably true for the both of you too. But I didn't really understand what I was getting into in terms of all the student loans that I was taking out and what interest was, and the fact that, okay, I'm going to take out all these loans. Okay, fine, I'll get a good job and I'll pay them back. Well, it's not quite so easy. It ends up taking a long time to pay back loans, and interest makes them very expensive. You're paying about half each month that I pay, and the last student loan I have left it's almost half interest. Which makes it really frustrating to see knowing how much you're paying for these student loans and seeing how slowly your principal is going down. So, I think that's another failure of the public school system, is that, we don't really graduate with an understanding of economics or finance or interest or loans or investing or entrepreneurship or anything like that. So, I kind of look back on my college years it's almost kind of a funny story now more than anything. But it's still, at the time, it sucked. Even to this day, I still occasionally have dreams where I'm freaking out that, oh crap, I'm not going to pass. Like, what am I going to do? It was a very, very tense and frustrating and difficult time that spring semester of my senior year of college. But hey, everything has worked out, so I guess I wouldn't really change things. I guess what I would change is that, Daniel, what you said, I would probably go down the route of the trade school or apprenticeship, and not go into debt, develop a skill right from the very beginning and not go into debt for that skill. And that's what I would recommend to just about anybody these days. I mean, I got a brother of mine who was in the Marines, and when he got out of the Marines, he kind of bounced around to a number of different jobs, and he finally went to lineman school about 4 years ago. And now he's been a lineman, for 4 years. And there's issues with the way the power lines and the electrical grids and the utility companies and the unionized labor for linemen, how all that works and all the government bullshit associated with that. But still, leaving all that aside, he's got a good paying job because he's got a real skill that's really valuable. And it took a while to find that. And what I guess my hope would be to help kids these days not to take so long to find that. I think the earlier people can figure that out, the better.
Yeah, I think that was Rancho's message: was find out what your talent is, and then have true joy in it, and be good at it, whatever you have that aptitude and joy for, and then the success will find you. And it's a nice story. I'm still kind of looking for what I'm good at. I've just kind of like continued on. I figured out how to do a similar thing that I did in high school, in college, where I was a TA and I figured out the right professors to take and the right classes to take, and I ended up getting honors in that. But my first quarter in college was also like a rude awakening, where my grades were like under what I was used to with the amount of effort that I usually would expend into whatever I was doing. But I turned it around and figured it out by the time I graduated. But I still, going out of college, didn't know what I was going to do. And in some ways, I still don't know what I want to do. Like, I have a job and it pays me fairly well and lets me do it from here. And so this whole lockdown stuff hasn't affected me in that way. In that regard, I was already kind of doing this here. And so I'm one of those privileged folks that still has like an income and a way to provide for my family. But I am also very much against the lockdowns and the whole concept of it. But anyway, point being, still not sure what I want to do when I grow up, even though I'm a mid-40s fucking white male.
Sounds like we need to get this final summary and review, and I am very curious to hear what Daniel's review is, since you thought I was going to hate this film, and it turned out I did not. Does that mean that you hated it?
Oh boy. Well, let's get into final summary and review. And I'll just say I did not hate this film, though I think it was definitely longer than it needed to be. And I don't know if that's just one of the attributes of it being a Bollywood film. Are all, Jared, maybe you can tell me, are Bollywood films in general like lengthy? And is there a particular reason why they might be? I know that a lot of people will view movies as like an escape from their daily lives. And so perhaps having movies that are extra long and full of song and dance and these types of stories is part of what they are. But it seemed like they were padding for time quite a bit in this one. And then I'll get into my review. But do you know, is Bollywood film, are they generally longer than typical US-based films?
That's a good question. I don't think I've seen another Bollywood film other than this one.
Have you seen Slumdog Millionaire? I think that was kind of a Bollywood movie.
I have seen that movie. I thought it was Hollywood, but I could be wrong about that.
Is it also long, extra long? I remember watching, but I don't know if
I don't remember it being overly long. I remember it being a good movie. I liked it a lot. I do remember there being a couple of like song and dance routines in it, though, so that kind of tells me that it's a Bollywood movie. But no, Daniel, to answer your question, I don't think they're normally that long, but I do think the song and dance probably that probably added at least 30 minutes into this movie that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I was kind of okay with the song and dance stuff, but yeah, I think that there probably is like a good 2-hour movie in this. I mean, it's a fine movie as it is, but it does go very, very slow. I do like the whole Rancho character and his ideas challenging conventional thinking, challenging conventional schooling methods, and identifying pressures that are driving people to suicide and suicidal ideation. And his ideas of having joy in what you do and becoming really good at it, specializing in something, and then the success will find you. I do like his ideas of telling yourself that you can get through difficult times by doing this all is well thing. You can calm yourself down. You can will yourself to do something. You can do this mind over matter thing, the whether you think you can or you can't, either way, you're right. So overall, I think it's a really good movie. And I think that it is a cutting critique of the one size fits all top down educational approach. And it's also a bit of a coming age story. So overall, I think it has a really strong message. It has philosophical questions regarding learning and becoming what you would like to be in your life. And for that, I give it really good, big, good ups and feels and stuff. So I'm going to give it an 8.0 on this, Robert. What is your take on my take?
8 idiots out of 10. 8 idiots out of 10 idiots. Okay. I think I'm not exactly sure why it's so long, but this is just one guess, in that I can imagine being a screenwriter and having all these, you want to make like the screenwriter in a typical Hollywood movie, it might be this long, but then the production and like the producers and, the money guys would come in and they'd be like, well, this scene is way too expensive. We're just going to cut this. And then the writer's like pulling his hair out going, well, how am I going to make the story fit, with the scene cut? Because in this scene, X happens and then that leads to the next scene and blah, 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 blah. And so then you just get like these plot holes in a lot of Hollywood movies, but they're nice and short and they're concise. And it's when one movie happens where you see like a 90-minute concise, perfect movie that, makes sense all the way through. Where in this film, they were so diligent with setting up and paying all, setting up all the plot points and paying off all the plot points, and they didn't cut out any of the setups that maybe that's what contributed to the runtime. That's what it seems to me. And then there's probably also some extraneous, character work that probably could have compressed into some scenes. So I do think that there's like a, maybe a 2 to 2.5 hour or 2 hour and 20-minute cut that I think gets like a 9. But in this, I think this version for me is like an 8.5. Still really, really strong. I enjoyed all the, I think thinking back now to Slumdog Millionaire, that was like the whole plot was, how does this character know all the answers to these questions? And it was basically, well, this is why. And it was basically why how does this poor kid know all these weird ass trivia? And it's like, well, this is the story of his life. And so it shows the setup and then the payoff. So maybe it's the style of storytelling in Bollywood films. I don't know enough about it, but it seems to be that they are more interested in telling a coherent story than in trimming the runtime to 90 minutes. So maybe that's just a decision that's made there that's what they value more, where Americans are more about, no. I get it. Just give me my 90-minute movie. I'll get in. I won't think about it. I'll just enjoy it for 90 minutes and then I'll get out. Maybe the Indian audiences are more about, no, I want the story to actually be coherent and make sense. So I can appreciate that. As a film critic, I wish more movies would do that. And since we're going to watch like a 3.5 hour movie next week, that the theatrical cut was butchered down to 2 hours or something. And supposedly it's the total shit show.
Yeah,
whereas if you watch the actual director's cut, where these important scenes weren't cut out, it actually makes sense. Yes, it's way too long, but you're not cutting out important information that the audience needs in order to follow the story. So, long story short, fantastic film, highly recommended. Thank you, Jared. Obviously, this is a movie that didn't get a lot of push like zero fanfare over here in the West. I never even heard about it. Everyone I tell about this movie had never heard of it before. So yeah, get out there, check it out, and tell your friends about it if you enjoyed it. I highly encourage people to watch this and support these kind of creations because I think I would enjoy more movies like this. Not just comedies, romantic comedies, Bollywood movies with singing and dancing, but coherent stories that are not afraid to extend the runtime, even though I do think they were a little bit long, and I wish the movie had a little bit stronger start. I think it is slow for the first half an hour, and there's a little bit of bloat, but overall, I can't really criticize it too much because it is so good.
Robert, let me ask you this. Have you seen this show, speaking of slow starts and bloat?
I've only listened to one episode, and it was pretty good, but I wasn't on it. So that's probably why it was pretty good.
Okay, yeah. All right, good. Yeah, so 8.5 idiots from Robert, 8 idiots from me. So Jared, let's get your final summary review and your number of idiots out of 10.
I'll give it 8.5 idiots right along there with Baller Bill. I actually just while you were talking there, I pulled up the top Bollywood movies of all time on IMDb, and 3 Idiots comes in at number 6, and 3 of the 5 movies that are rated higher than it are longer than it. One of these movies is 321 minutes. How many? 5 hours and 20 minutes.
Wow. Okay, so it is a feature, not a bug. All right, interesting.
Yeah, it's a part of Bollywood. I mean, every single one of them is at least 2 hours long. The shortest one is 134 minutes, so 2 hours and 15 minutes, which isn't crazy. But yeah, 321 minutes, 165 minutes, 189 minutes.
Okay.
They love the screenwriter.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I gotta say, there is something satisfying about having the setups pay off and having so many of them happen to where it like stands out to us, you know, because we're so used to being let down with all the setups with no payoff.
Yeah, or the random payoff that was like, well, why did that happen?
Right. Yeah, I remember we were watching The Purge, and I was like, yeah, they could have done this or this or this, and it would have been great. You know, would have done a great callback or whatever. And so great premise, lots of opportunity, and opportunities missed. And it seems like this is the opposite, where it's like every opportunity they took, so much so that they made it super long.
Yep.
Yeah. Amir Khan, the guy who plays Rancho, he's like the Brad Pitt, or I don't know, the Bradley Cooper of India. So he's in a large number of these, you know, top Bollywood movies that I'm scrolling through here. But yeah, so he's a superstar over there. This has nothing to do with anything that we talked about on the episode today, but what's interesting in Indian culture is that, from what I gather, it's a fairly racist culture, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but they definitely prefer light-skinned Indians over dark-skinned Indians.
Like in their films?
In their films and in, like, I think just
the
in
fashion
general,
industries
like,
or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like most of the the advertising industry, and I mean in terms of I mean, I haven't studied this, but just in some conversation with some Indian people that I'm friends with or got to know over the years, and just from, you know, watching these movies, you hardly ever see. I mean, Farhan is probably the kid who played Farhan. I'm not sure who it is.
The Silencer guy. He was kind of dark.
Not Silencer. The guy who the photographer
with the glasses.
Yeah, he's like the darkest that I've seen scrolling through here, and he's still fairly light skinned.
I've heard similar things about like telenovelas in Mexico. Like almost all of the actors and actresses are lighter skinned compared to, you know, you go to Mexico and you just see, you know, the average person there.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly line up with the real demographics of India, and like you're saying, like Mexico. I just figured I'd put that out there since we're still talking, and it was something that I had thought about.
Yeah, I mean, it probably should have been bonus content because now somebody's gonna be super big mad, but
Yeah, it should have been bonus content. I forgot about that.
no, that's all
Anyway,
right.
yeah. So I mean, there's that. I really liked Silencer's character. I thought he was hilarious. Even though he was supposed to be kind of like the villain of the movie, he was one of my behind Ran. I mean, everybody's gonna love Rancho just because he's the man, but Silencer was hilarious. I really liked his character. He brought a lot of comic relief to the movie. uh, his farts were quite glorious, and they had they had put gas. They like put caution tape over the door to his dorm room and called it a gas chamber, and he's always blaming it on other people. He does the silent but deadlies, and then blames it on Raju. Um, Speaking of Raju, the quick glimpse into Raju's home life was kind of sad, and it kind of talks would have been an opportunity. Maybe we'll talk about this in bonus content, but like just the nature of poverty, and how grinding and how difficult and just tough that can be.
Yeah, and that was extra pressure on him because he was trying to provide
Exactly.
his sick father and his mother, who she wasn't able to earn any money, and his sister. He had to come up with a dowry for her,
Right.
and that was one of the things. And I'll get into this, I guess, in bonus content because we are like so long, incredibly long on this. But that virus uses those pressures or those issues that he knows about, those personal pain points. He uses them and weaponizes them
Yeah. Yeah,
to
when he writes the monthly salaries of the families on the board in front of Raju and Farhan,
yeah.
he's just like, hey, this is the salary that Rancho's family makes, and it's like some exorbitant number. And he's like, if you take away a zero, it's still good money. You take away two zeros, maybe now you got to start worrying a little bit, and that's what Farhan's family make. And you take away another zero, and well, now you really got to worry, and that's what Raju's family makes. And they're both just sitting there like, and then they try and break off their friendship with Rancho because they're kind of buying into Virus's propaganda there that he's a bad influence on them.
Yeah, and
And
he's totally using that inequality as a wedge and trying to get
yeah.
them jealous of him.
Well, I think he's trying to make them think like, oh, this is the reason why Rancho doesn't care, is because he's going to fall back on this, this silver spoon that's in his mouth. Um,
But that belies his
that
performance.
belies his talents for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, we really should wind this one down. Jared,
Yeah.
you've been
Eight and a half
guest.
idiots. Yeah.
8.5 idiots from Robert, 8 idiots from me, and we are, of course, 3 idiots talking about the movie 3 Idiots. This has been our episode on 3 Idiots, and you can find the show notes more at lastnerves.com/154. You can find Jared's content linked on there, but Breaking Liberty and Anarcholand. And do you have any other links or anything that you would like to share with the audience before we get into the Kathleen Turner Overdrive, which is bonus content available for our Patreon supporters?
Nope. BreakingLiberty.com. That's I wrote an ebook about the series Breaking Bad, and it's the subtitle of Breaking Liberty is Libertarian Commentary on AMC's hit show. So it's a collection of essays all about different scenes and plot lines from the great TV show Breaking Bad. Anarcholand.com. My Anarcholand project is currently on hiatus, but that will be coming back at some point. And I kind of hinted last time I was on the show of my desire to do my own podcast, and I think I'm getting closer to pulling the trigger on that. Probably within the next year or two, I think I'm going to get started on that after I kind of get my feet set here. My family just moved across the country. Well, I guess down the country. about 8 months ago. So I'm getting my client base built up here, and I'm getting us settled into the home, and I'm getting my kids and my my home life all set up. But I've got a friend of mine who said he would be willing to do all of the production side of the podcast, which makes my life a lot easier.
Oh,
So
Robert knows all about that.
That's what you got to do. You got to have a Daniel. Get yourself a Daniel, and it's super easy.
Yeah,
just show up,
watch a movie. Yeah, no, but I mean, so yeah, I'm gonna go down that route at some point here. I always appreciate being able to come on your guys' show, because it gives me that chance to vent and let out some of this stuff that weighs on a libertarian, all these regulations and taxes and mass incarcerations and drone bombings and terrible schools and all that the government thrusts upon us. So I appreciate the outlet, and I'm looking forward to building one of my own here at some point. And I have a feeling that I'll be returning the favor, or asking for the favor of you guys coming and joining me, and maybe we'll talk about some episodes of The Wire or whatever here, come the Anarcho cast whenever that gets going.
Cool.
Yeah, bring it on. Yeah, and we'll definitely love to have you back even before that launches, and once it does launch, if we can provide any modest boost that we have garnered in our years of doing this. But Jared, thanks again for being our guest. I hope you'll stick around for a little bit longer for the Kathleen Turner Overdrive. And Robert, you mentioned the long film we're going to be doing next. It is Kingdom of Heaven, and it is the director's cut. Now, on Amazon Prime, included, if you are an Amazon Prime member, is the traditional theatrical cut. I do not recommend that you watch the theatrical cut. Please go out of your way to watch the Ridley Scott director's cut, because it is, yes, very long, but it also makes the movie make sense. And that, of course, is a big motivating factor for us in wanting to watch a movie, is if it makes sense. I think, Robert, you would agree with me on that one. And that's why this movie was so satisfying. It made sense.
Absolutely. Yes. Watch the director's cut. I'm excited actually to watch it. I do love a good medieval epic. And yeah, it's a shame that they put so much time and energy into Kingdom of Heaven and whatever pressures were put upon it to butcher it into some incoherent mess is a shame. So yeah, check it out. Hopefully it's good. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, but I am actually excited to see it.
Well, I left out the best part. It is, of course, a recommendation by our buddy Mike C., who's been on probably a dozen times now, and he says it is a brilliant film, the director's cut version. And so it's a Christmas special. It's the Christmas spirit, in that we're talking about a movie about the Crusades, because it's, Christmas. And what's more appropriate than that?
So appropriate than killing Muslims on Christmas.
Well, we're doing it.
What, did I say something wrong? What?
It's going to be a good movie, and we're going to talk about it with our buddy Mike C. And Jared, this has been a good movie. We talked with you, our good buddy. And we'll be back next week talking about the other movie. And we are, of course, three idiots talking about movies on The Last Nighters. And you can find us at lastnighters.com/154 for this episode and more. And with that, we'll say good night and last night, and see you next week. And peace out, homies. Maximum freedom.